Reg, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, man? How are you? I'm good.
Like I said in the private chat, if I were any better, I'd be having twins.
That's right. I get it.
How has your Thursday started so far?
It's been a
It's
good
not
week.
even Thursday though. Hold on.
Yeah,
Sorry. Skipping days on you.
yeah, lots of boxes checked this week, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Awesome.
It's assessment season for some of our financial services customers, so we got to get some stuff done by April 15th for them. So like Q1 for us, you know, doing dozens and dozens and dozens of assessments to help these folks comply with some of the state and federal regulations. So.
You mentioned it a lot there. April 15th is not only my wedding day, but it's tax day. So I'll never forget that. Are these audits for like fiscal years, or are they for security, or are they self-imposed by you?
No, they're so the New York State has a pretty far-reaching state level law. It's called the New York State Department of Financial Services Cybersecurity Requirements. So basically, there's I don't know how many covered entities that are subject to their cybersecurity mandates, and so we're going through and helping all of our DFS subjected customers get compliant or at least get through the assessment so that they know what they need to report on April 15th.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
Is it so? Do you have to, as their security partner, sign off on your audit, or are you preparing them for somebody else to do an audit?
It's technically not an audit. So an audit and assessment are actually very different.
Okay.
So we're helping them get ready to report on their compliance status. So some customers are in better shape than others, and there's been a lot of focus on accountability, actually across a lot of different regulations. The SEC is also and others. So we can't report. In fact, we don't even have access to the portal where they do the certification and reporting, but we're helping our customers get through that whole process.
This doesn't need to be specific about your customers, but what's the most apparent thing that these companies lack when it comes to preparedness for this assessment?
I don't know if it's one thing. Generally speaking, our customers are in slightly better shape, at least on average. So they're doing a lot of the basics, tier one stuff. But I would say, again, our average customer is 100 employees. So they're all small businesses. And, they definitely lack some of the like tier three maturity, like a configuration management program, or business continuity is always a challenge. There's other areas too, I think, are probably pretty common. But I don't know if I've seen any real patterns. It's all over the board.
All over the board. That is interesting. What's your favorite type of customer to serve? I don't know if any of them are listening, so you can keep it as nondescript as you'd like. But what's your favorite kind of customer to serve?
I don't know. That's a good question. I like people I like customers who are good people and who see the value in cybersecurity, whether they're in a horrible state or a really positive state is less interesting to us. I also love when our customers, because we will help our customers win business because cybersecurity is an asset. So all of our customers, they're during their business development process, they're getting asked questions about their cybersecurity program, or it might be like an annual review from their best customers. So we come in, we sit next to them, and we go through all these requirements, and then it's awesome to see a lead just go, nope, no more questions. We're ready to work with you guys. And when we can help our customers win business or get insurance or keep their best customer, that's really what feels the best.
Have you ever read the book Demand Side Sales 101? Or have you ever heard of the Jobs to be Done framework?
No.
It's
I don't read much, Connor.
Which is weird because you come off as a well-read man. So I don't know. You're putting well-read vibes into the universe. Or rather, I guess when you You always have some interesting, when I ever ask a question, you always have some interesting thing that's not, I feel this way because I feel this way. It's like, well, there's this and there's that, and there's these other things that go into it. Um, anyway, the jobs to be done framework, it's basically what questions are your clients asking themselves before they get to you. It's the this is probably a super bastardized version of the I've read the whole book and forget most of it at this point, but I guess that's why you don't read. You forget most of it at the end of the day.
Right.
And you're hoping it just impacts your decision making enough that you can like take a little bit of it with you moving forward. But it's all about your client has a set of questions that they need answered, whether they can verbalize them to you or not. It's still your job to help them get to the answers. Some of those questions revolve around, do I actually need to do this? Some of them revolve around, well, how do you do this specific thing that I already know I need to do? But the jobs to be done framework is basically, what are the jobs? What are the individual things that you as a company need to do to get those questions answered before a client reaches out to you? Because they're answering those questions with or without you. In today's day and age where consumers are incredibly educated, or rather they have the ability to educate themselves online and other resources like MSP Geek is a huge community, and every time I go into any of the channels, it's should I buy this POS software? It's like, then you have 6 people say, yeah, absolutely. And you have 6 people say, don't even look this way. So it's like, you could get all the information you want. Doesn't necessarily mean you'll get the answers. And the whole point of the framework is that if you do your job right, if you answer those questions properly, you won't even have to make the sale. It's already made by the time it arrives at your doorstep. So the book states that a really clear indication that you've done this really well is that you've shortened the time from inbound interest to sale to as short as it could possibly be while still going through, meaningful diligence and doing the right amount of work.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Doesn't sound too interesting to you, does it?
I mean, there's so many like sales philosophies out there. And well, I'll say small businesses, they have their own for sure. They are a fickle bunch at times. I mean, we've had opportunities close in hours, and then we've had some take 6 months. It's all over the board.
Yeah, it is interesting. One thing I've realized is if this isn't number one priority, that means it's number infinite priority. It's like, you may tell me this is 2 or 3. What I heard was things are going to leapfrog it. So if it's not one, it's not anything right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, for us so we have all of these qualification criteria for partners, for our internal teams, but only one is mandatory. And that is, you got to check the box that they're ready to buy now. It's just a matter of figuring out who they're going to work with and what are they going to do. But if they're not ready to buy literally right now, then they're not qualified.
That is true. You still want to keep in touch with them. It's interesting that
we throw them in drip, but we're not going to spend any cycles, going through a business development process with them.
That is true.
We don't change minds. Like we're not in the business of changing minds. I think it's like personal fitness. Until you're ready to get healthy, no amount of ads and blue pills and Pelotons is going to help. It's not going to convince you. You got to do it yourself. I think the same is true for organizations, companies who are considering cyber. It's like until they have figured out that they got to do this or that they want to do this and that there's value to it, they're going to be a challenge.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. The stream played over there, and I thought you were double talking to me, but I guess you weren't. What's been on your mind lately in the world of cybersecurity?
There's always something. Yesterday, I saw a very interesting post. It was on LinkedIn. And interesting posts on LinkedIn become more and more rare every day. But this one was awesome. And someone I don't know had reposted a post from someone else I don't know. But basically in it, it said that security maturity. So if you reach a level of maturity in security, one of your goals is figuring out how much of security you can ignore, which I thought was really, really a real amazing description of that. So if you're managing risk, you're helping people do the absolute minimum. Like you're doing the absolute minimum in cybersecurity. And the way he had put it was really just a light bulb went off, and it was fantastic. So I'm going to do something about that. But, I think that's, as we continue to try and help the MSP industry differentiate between cyber and IT, and our customers figure out what's the difference between orbital fire and an MSP. We're at a point where we're really helping our customers figure out how much of cybersecurity we can ignore. And I feel like the other side of this coin is organizations who are just getting started in cyber, and so they can't wait to add more stuff to their stack, more options, more this, more that. And while it may seem, antithetical or counterintuitive, reality is if you're managing risk well, you're doing the absolute minimum that you need to protect that organization's mission. So that was really an interesting side note, and I love it.
Why do you think that spoke to you? Is that because you don't hear anyone say that?
No one. How many people do you hear say that other than us?
I hear we need to sell more security for security's sake is usually how a lot of the conversation goes.
It's always more. And honestly, again, it sounds counterintuitive, but honestly, that's not why cybersecurity was invented.
I had an interesting conversation with another business owner where the perspective that this business owner gave me was security exists to secure the convenience of the end user. And it's like that sounds like way out of left field, but then he went into the following. He said, why does any technology exist? It exists to make an end user's job more convenient in some capacity, or to remove the need for them to do the job because the software now does it. So if your entire job, the entire job of security is to secure the technology, implement process, and secure the people, what have you done? Well, you're ensuring that the convenience that this group of people continue to receive it while they continue to, as you put it, accomplish the mission of the company. So his point was, anytime any security member or anyone anywhere in the company says we need to implement this more security, and it introduces any amount of additional convenience, it's like, you better be getting 10x returns on that security, because your whole mission is to make sure the convenience can still exist.
Yeah, I would actually argue that security and convenience are only loosely coupled. Convenience and IT, those are, I think, bound at the hip, but security often comes with trade-offs, and a lot of those trade-offs are convenience. About any insecure condition, whether it's the president visiting a hostile country, or it's entering a password, getting authenticated for an application, oftentimes security is an inconvenience, but it's an enabler, right? So when you think about protecting the mission isn't necessarily about convenience. Convenience is hopefully something that you can achieve through technology and process, maybe, and some other things. But I think their security and convenience are really only loosely coupled. I think sometimes security might positively impact convenience, but I think in a lot of cases it's actually a negative impact.
The easiest example here is implementing MFA controls.
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious one, but yes, for sure.
That's interesting.
Anyway, if you're listening out there, if you're not really if your North Star isn't helping your customers do the absolute minimum in security, then probably need to go back to the risk management manual.
I think, this ties together a lot of concepts we've talked about in the past, which is like, what is the cybersecurity poverty line, the amount of security that if a customer's not willing to invest in, you probably shouldn't work with them. It's probably the exact same amount of security, which is the minimum amount of security required to actually allow them to continue to exist.
Well, I think it sort of also depends on where's the trend. So if you look at an organization who started out, at 0, and now they're at, 30, I'm making this up, and they're headed in the right direction year over year, you might make different decisions about them than if it was one that started out at 50 and has declined year over year. I think, there's a lot of context that's missing from just a single line. But yeah, no doubt. I mean, again, I think we talked about this last time. There have been customers that we've separated from just because they became a risk to us. And even though we're completely garden walled from our customers, meaning a compromise there doesn't directly affect us and we're not connected to them, we don't have access to our customers, but certainly the reputational risk is there.
That is true.
So we've had to do that a couple of times. It sucks, but what are you going to do? Some customers are just they're not good fits.
No, I think it's all about expectations. Well, you mentioned earlier, is Orbital Fire an MSP? The answer is no. But then, all right, well, how are we different, and what are other people going to believe about it? It's all about expectations. And I learned a little bit of this when I was a property manager in a different life. I'm maybe young, but I've had several different lives at this point, and enough stress for every one of them. And it was the owners that I set expectations with on, this is how I'm going to communicate. This is how you need to communicate with me. And then we agreed on it and never had issues with. The owners where I didn't do that up front, I had problems with. None of us got what we wanted out of the relationship, which is weird.
Right. Expectations is huge.
There's a post from a guy by the name of Josh Kotler that I saw earlier that said, MSPs are now being sued for their role in breaches. This was a nightmare scenario when I sold my MSP, and now it's happening for real. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we talked about this last week. There was a story that became very public and very visible about an MSP being sued by a law firm customer for whatever their responsibility and accountability was, and who knows what that actually is. But I think that's a shared accountability, right? And I think in particular, if you're an MSP who hasn't really communicated the jurisdiction between IT and security well, or if you haven't set expectations about what you're doing and what you're not, I think that's definitely, you're asking for problems if you can't do that well. And we'll see how this turns out. It's a law firm, so
not looking good.
There would be better customers to mess up if there is such a thing. I think MSPs are in a very difficult spot right now because the entire industry is hammering them on this idea that the only path to viability and success and growth is through cyber, and it's not. And all you have to do is scroll through Reddit to see the problems that are going on in this industry, and listen to the forums and the kind of undertones that are out there. But if you think a PE-backed super conglomerate is interested in helping your customers, I think you've kind of missed the point. But I would not want to be an MSP right now. Again, it kind of goes back to, I watched this happen 20 years ago when all of these break-fix IT providers started hearing about managed services. And clearly managed services was the wave of the future, right? It solved 100 problems. But it was so difficult for these IT providers to change their P&L, to change their branding, their communication, the way they sold, the way they supported, the way they priced. I mean, their entire business had to change. And even so, I feel like managed services was invented around 1999. As far as I could tell, it was probably 6 or 7 years before we saw critical mass in managed services, because it took that long. Even though they were in pain and there was an obvious solution that was better, it took years. We're kind of seeing that now with cybersecurity. I think there's a lot of pain for MSPs in cyber, regardless of whether it's accountability and liability and lawsuits, or it's profitability, or trying to find cyber talent. I mean, these folks are really in a bad spot. And there's clearly a better option out there, at least one better option out there, which is finding a good cybersecurity partner. I'm sure there's others, as well. We would never claim to be the end all of this. We are definitely a better option than trying to do cybersecurity yourself, but there's probably 10 other good ideas. But making the commitment to change your business model in that way, it's going to take years. I think we're only 2 years into this, so we probably have another 5 of watching MSPs struggle with this cybersecurity question.
I'd be curious in the late 90s and early 2000s when this transition to managed services happened in front of you, was there as much interest by private equity and other very large groups?
Definitely not.
Is that going to change? I feel like that's going to change how this ends up playing out greatly. Like
Well, it's going to make it even harder.
how it played out
Uh,
in the early 2000s though was like those that couldn't failed, those that could continued on and ate up the rest of the market, right?
Yeah, well, so there's, we're seeing roll-ups in private equity in a lot of different areas of the industry, but certainly when you think about the big players, big vendors, they are well-funded and they have almost unreasonable growth expectations. And if they're gonna flip those multiples, they got to hit some of these quotas. So, without saying names, these big players are forced into selling anything but their grandmother. Anything they can do, they're out of, starting to run out of gadgets to sell. And so my hope is that they start to lose interest in cyber and they move on to something else like payroll or, other places where they could sell services and gadgets, because the cybersecurity thing is different enough where it's going to be very difficult for an MSP to do IT well and do cybersecurity well. And for sure, if these players, these big P funded organizations are going to hit their numbers and get to those valuations, that cybersecurity may not be it. They're going to have to roll into other industries, and soon enough, MSPs will be selling, I don't know, LED lighting for your office or janitorial services or whatever it is, because there's just not enough growth there. And I think we're already seeing it. And again, scroll through Reddit and listen to the fatigue and the frustration of yet another tool in my stack that I can't afford. I don't know how to sell. I can't find people to operate. And at the end of the day, I'm not making money. That's only going to last so long. But I think private equity has intensified that conversation.
I think it makes the transition. Well, it's like if I can't make it, I'll just sell. Maybe it's not for the price I want, but I'll still sell. I remember you and I having a really good conversation about if all of your education on security comes from the vendors that provide the tools you sell, be very wary of the conflicting incentive.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, for sure. And I don't demonize these folks at all. I mean, everybody wants to make money.
Yeah.
We're a capitalist democracy. So I don't hold that against anybody, but I think MSPs probably, if they want to continue to be viable, they're going to need to do some investigation on what's the future look like for us. What do we want to do? Why did we get into this in the first place? And rather than listening to someone else bark at them about cybersecurity, I mean, is that really what they want to do? Does that really seem like a viable business option? And there's not a lot of objective content out there.
Do you think the security tools ever get user-friendly enough that companies just begin to operate them themselves and create their own security?
Well, if they're operating themselves, then I would say that that's pretty user-friendly. But I think, I think we're a ways from that. And maybe that's the case. But I think managing risk, and there's just so much context in cyber. I think that there's a big gap between where we are now and that sort of security utopia. But I hope things get easier, for sure. As we learn more about, because the cybersecurity industry is still pretty young. We make tons of mistakes and we're experimenting all the time. And, I think as we learn things that work consistently, then let's figure out a way to automate those and, focus our people on the value add where a human brain makes a difference. But I mean, I think inevitably we're moving in that direction. I'm not sure how long it's going to take.
I don't know. I always go back to an analogy of like
awareness. When do you think awareness tools are just going to learn enough from their data where they can just build and rebuild and tweak campaigns and frequencies and do human risk assessments? I would argue that we're still kind of far away from that.
I actually have some incendiary opinions about the awareness training industry that I think I've shared with you before. But
you don't say.
A statement I've made is I think awareness training is a dead industry and nobody's realized it's a zombie. In the way that it sits today is I always go back to, I'm a math hobbyist. I studied math in college, didn't go beyond that, but I still love to learn about it, right? So I look at all this information released by Verizon's DBIR and other breach reports, and I'm looking at, all right, this trend of humans making mistakes, and not like they put the wrong set of, this tells you how good I am at writing code. They put the wrong set, they ordered the code in a wrong way, or they made, they made some kind of vulnerability in their code base. Not that kind of mistake. The kind of mistake that's like, you received training on that 6 times this year, and yet you still did that. That kind of mistake is the number one source for why security breaches or theorized security breaches, because we wouldn't use the B word because that's a legal term, happen. And so I'm looking at this, I'm like, I wonder how long this trend's been going. And it turns out, so long as Verizon has put together a report, and so long as other companies have put together a report, humans are consistently the number one reason making mistakes like that. And so I'm looking at this, and then I look at the largest competitors in my industry, like the companies who say we've solved this, and we impact human behavior, and we change it in such a positive way. I'm like, you guys are making hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars a year, and you're telling me that the problem's gotten worse every year that you've made more money? It's like, I get it. The worldwide market and you being able to impact that are two separate things, but hold on here. Something doesn't feel right.
Right.
And I think the whole underlying assumption of the awareness training industry is if we just had more data, we could tell you what your humans are going to do. And I think the one thing I've learned with my short 28 years on this planet is nobody knows what the hell humans are going to do ever. It's like, well, that's unexpected. I didn't know that. It's like, we don't even know. And so the theory that I've come up with is if your entire theory of like where the industry needs to go is we just need more data so we can tell you things that are more accurately. It's like, I'd love to talk with you about it, because in my mind, the amount of information you need is tantamount to sequence the entire human genome of every individual that you're saying, the behavior of, and then you can predict it. So, can we do that? Absolutely not. So I don't know. It's like more data is not going to get us out of this problem. And that's what I think awareness training is really trying to say at this point.
Makes sense.
Not to make it too spicy. I've gotten privately lambasted for that. I'm like, hey, I'll have a public conversation with you, or a private conversation. Don't matter to me. I'm willing to change my mind.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you. Yeah. Any, I know we're coming up right on time here. Any last minute advice for the folks in the crowd?
Think critically about anything you hear, whether it's from us or Kaseya or anyone, and ask yourself if that feels like it's true to you. I think that's important.
That's true. What I took away from our conversation was just because you know the rules of the game doesn't mean you're good at playing them or playing the game
or playing the right game.
Yeah. So it's I go back to baseball because I played it growing up and I hated it. I don't even like watching it right now. I know the rules. Doesn't mean I'm good. Basketball. I love watching basketball. I love the game. I know the rules. I'm not playing basketball. No way. I'm not the next Muggsy Bogues. It's not going to be me. Awesome. Well, folks, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching us ramble on. Sometimes we come up with some nuggets of wisdom, I guess. Mainly it's Reg here, and I'm just trying to pull it out of him with somewhat decent questions. So thank you for being here too, Reg. It was a blast to be with you.
Thank you for the invitation. Enjoyed the conversation.
I enjoyed it as well. We'll see you all next time, folks.
We'll see you. Be good.